This journal started with cereal boxes, turned into a card sketchbook, and somewhere along the way, chaos entered the chat. No fancy machines, no plan that stayed on track, just a whole lot of paper, glue, and creative problem solving. Let me show you how the sketch keeper came together. Hi, it's time once again for coffee, crafting, and cats with the Ginger Cat Lady. I'm Pam, and Harley is allegedly supervising, but I caught him distressing his own tail with tea-dye ink earlier, so we'll see how that plays out. Today's project is part of Waste Not Wednesday, and I'm making a full-size, refillable greeting card sketchbook as a gift for my mom. It's built with cereal boxes, happy planner discs, and decorated in soft vintage layers. With 7 themed dividers, she can organize any way she wants. Here's what I used to build the journal. Nori paste to glue the chipboard layers together, a set of flat gold happy planner discs, a disc punch, although I'll also show you 2 cheaper ways to get the same results if you don't have one. Then I grabbed a handful of scrapbook papers, and for the base, I used 1 cereal box and 1 Funyuns box. Let me clear all of this off the table and I'll be right back. I'm using 2 layers of cereal boxes for the front and back cover because I wanted it to be sturdy, but still thin enough to fit through my Happy Planner punch. I wanted to keep this easy, so in true lazy girl crafting mode, I measured the first panel and then just traced it for the others. I hate measuring, and this totally works. After that, I used my craft knife and a ruler to trim the 4 cover pieces. To finish the basic structure of each cover, I punched the disc holes and then glued the 2 cereal box layers together. Side tip, check thrift stores for Happy Planner discs. I'm not saying I donated an entire bin of them once, but I'm also not saying it. Once I had everything cut apart, I went ahead and glued 2 layers together for the front cover and 2 layers for the back cover. Using nori paste to adhere the scrapbook paper worked great at first, but I eventually switched to a glue stick because the nori was just a bit too wet for the paper, and I was afraid it was going to tear. Even though I have a small punch made for disc binding, 2 layers of cereal box was just too thick. For the first cover, I didn't pre-punch the scrapbook paper because I thought it would be too hard to line the punched edge up with the cover, which had already been punched. So instead, I glued the paper down first and then had to use a craft knife to carefully cut out the holes. Spoiler alert, not easier. So for the other 3 covers, I punched the holes before gluing down the scrapbook paper, which turned out to be much easier in the long run. But of course, I only filmed one with the pre-punched holes, and somehow that's the one that gave me the most trouble. It was a total struggle trying to get everything to line up just right. Once everything was trimmed, I used a sanding tool to clean up any rough spots I missed while I was cutting and to scuff the edges just a bit, giving the covers a slightly distressed vintage vibe that fits right in with the rest of this project. And now it's time for the fun part, decorating the front cover. As you watch me working on the front cover, you may notice there are a few torn spots. That's because I didn't like how my first layout turned out. So I did what any reasonable crafter would do. I ripped it apart and started over. Sometimes the paper just doesn't vibe and you have to let it go. So eventually I did settle on a collage with soft blush, dusty green, and some warm neutrals to match the gold rings. The butterfly on the front cover went through a whole journey of its own. I started by spraying it with a diluted mix of some Tattered Rose Distress ink and water. But once it dried, I just wasn't loving the color. So I tried splattering on a bit of diluted vintage photo for contrast. Still nope. In the end, I just sprayed the whole thing with vintage photo. Much better. And now it matches the rest of the vintage feel. Okay, as promised, I will show you two other options that you have if you do not have the Happy Planner punch, but you want to do the disc binding. You can buy the discs by themselves. You don't have to buy them with a planner, and they do come in different sizes. So if you want a smaller book, then you could use the smaller discs or bigger discs, whichever. They have them in plastic like these. They have them in metal. There's all kinds of different kinds. Excuse me. So the Happy Planner punch has this like little mushroom shape that it punches in order for the disc to slide onto the paper. So I'm just going to put this in the end here and punch a hole. Okay. So it's just this little mushroom shape. All right. So the first option that we have is this little punch that has that same exact little mushroom shape. This is a punch that came from Temu. I will look and see if they have them on Amazon as well. This one from Temu was very inexpensive. Like, I want to say it was only like maybe $4 at the most, whereas the Happy Planner one with all of the holes is more like $30-$40. Okay. Granted, you can punch all of the holes that you need at one time with the Happy Planner one, but this one will work too. So if I wanted to use this for a paper, what I would do is figure out my spacing on my holes, okay? And I think, I don't know the exact spacing, but that they use with the Happy Planner, but you don't want it to be too far apart. So I'm thinking every if you do like every 2 centimeters, that would give you enough space in between to turn the pages, but not too much space so it gets too floppy and loose and weird. Okay. So I would make my marks, and then what I would do is I would take my punch and I would just line it up. Let's see, where's my mark? Make it too far in. I made it too far in. Okay. That does not help. All right, let me move it out of here more. All right, so there's my 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Okay. So I'm going to take my punch and I'm going to put it on here and line it up with that mark. So my mark is right there in between the two little lines. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm just going to punch. Okay. And I'm going to do that all the way down the page. Just line it up between those little marks, or between the line and punch. The 2 centimeters might be too much space in between, or not too much, might be too close. But you can look up online at the distance between the regular paper and figure it out that way, or I will look and see if I can find it and put it in the box below. All right, so there's one option, is buying a special little punch from Temu, or like I said, maybe Amazon might have it, but I'll look. The other option is to do the same thing. So we're going to mark our every 2 centimeters again. This time we're just going to use a regular hole punch. We're going to put it in, and I'm going to get that hole or that dot right in the middle of the hole. Okay. And I'm just going to punch my hole. All right. And then you take a pair of scissors and you're going to snip through up to that hole. And then you're going to go over just a little tiny bit, just a hair. So you get that little line. Okay. And I'm just going to do that really quick with all of them. And I know that this works well because when I first started doing the Happy Planner system, I always had pages that I would need to add from like the calendar from school and other things that I needed to keep that, came from the school district, but didn't have that kind of a punch. And I couldn't afford the punch at the time. So I figured out how to do it this way. So the way this works is, if like with this regular one, you just put it on the side like that and just kind of push it in. And those little tabs right there are what keep it on the ring or the disc. The disc has a little edge on either side right here. I don't know if you can see that little edge there. Okay. So it just slides right on. All right. Same thing over here. Slides right on and stays. Okay. Dollar Tree, $1.25. A pair of scissors that you probably have already. All right. So easy as that. The pages of this journal are full-size 8.5 by 11. To bring everything together visually, I added a light splatter of gold acrylic paint to both the covers and the divider pages. It gives just the right amount of sparkle without being too much. Each of the 7 dividers was built on a base of collaged book pages and embellished with themed vintage clusters. I chose a mix of motifs like travel, ink tools, florals, and celebrations to reflect different card design inspirations. My mom can label the tabs or rearrange the sections however she wants later on. The whole idea is flexibility and fun. And to finish it all off, I tucked in a stack of sheetload of card sketches I printed from Call Me Crafty Owl. It gives my mom a starting point if she wants to dive right into card making. You'll find a link to Crafty Owl's channel in the description box below. So that's the Sketch Keeper, a collaged, refillable, junk journal style card sketchbook made from cereal boxes and creative chaos. The pages are full size, the dividers are themed with vintage motifs, and there's plenty of room for her to grow it over time. I think she's going to love it, even though it did try to sabotage itself more than once. And if you had fun crafting along with me today, don't forget to come back on Finish It Friday. I'll be sharing the final stage of the Tarot Flip Flap journal, adding back in the cards and ephemera that I salvaged from the original book. If this project gave you ideas or just made you look at your cereal boxes differently, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with a crafty friend, and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you missed the first part of the Tarot Flip Flap journal card, check out last week's Waste Not Wednesday right here, where I dismantled the original journal, rescued all the cards, and added brand new signatures. And as always, may your scraps be endless and your glue never dry. See you in the next one. Bye.